So welcome everyone, and thanks to Farms.com and Maize X and Alpine for the opportunity today. For anyone who doesn't know who I am, I'm Peter Johnson, and this is kind of a cool stop because you've heard about the 89-year drought cycle now, right?
Well, maybe.
Maybe?
Yeah, it was pretty dry.
It was pretty dry, okay. But I mean, so let me twist it a different way then, John. Out of the last 5 years in Eastern Ontario, how many drought years have you experienced?
3.
3? A lot of people would say 4. I don't know, I don't farm out here. And we're back in, it's drought again right now, right? For most people at least. Right? So we're into an August drought. So whether you believe the 89-year drought cycle or it was dry or whatever, the other interesting thing is that we're into a La Nina cycle. It's starting right now. So La Nina means what? It means dry weather in Brazil, Argentina, and the US Midwest. And sometimes that drought spills over into Michigan and Ontario, and sometimes that drought doesn't get this far, but it's unlikely to be a wet cycle, right? And so when you think about that, it's kind of like, okay, how are we going to deal with these droughts that seem to be coming more frequently? And is there anything we can do from a management standpoint to make, effectively, grain without rain? Right? And really, if you think about grain without rain, it comes down to water management. So how much water does it take as a bare minimum, annual precipitation, not just in the growing season, annual precipitation, how much water does it take to grow a crop? 22 inches? Do I need 22 inches for a wheat crop? They grow wheat in the southwestern part of Saskatchewan. How much water do they get there? Mostly some smartass now says this year none. And this year that's right, it's none. And it really is incredibly dry there. And do they have a crop? And the answer is really no. Like they simply don't have a crop. But to grow a wheat crop effectively anywhere in the world, we need a minimum of 8 inches of annual precipitation. And that's a real minimum. Typically, if you don't have 10 to 12, you're probably not growing wheat on a regular basis, but you can go down as low as 8. John, you said 22 inches. So actually for corn and soybean crops, you actually do need 20 inches of moisture. You want to be a good row crop farmer, corn, soybean farmer, you need 20 inches of moisture. All right? So, how much water do you get here every year? Annual precipitation. Anybody? Any ideas? So in Ontario, pardon?
It used to be around 80 with snow and everything.
So maybe you're talking centimeters. I'm talking inches. I don't think we ever got 80 inches because that would be really wet. So actually the number is 35. We get 35 inches. If you need 20 to grow good soybean and corn crops, why don't we grow record soybean and corn crops every year?
Because it's when it comes.
Because it's timing, absolutely, that's part of it. And so in Western Canada in 2018, they got almost no rainfall. Almost as dry in 18 as they were this year. Not quite, but almost. And they got 60 bushel wheat. This year they're getting 5 bushel wheat. What's the difference?
Nothing after planting.
Nothing after planting? Well, they didn't get much after planting in 2018 either. What's the difference?
Reserves.
Exactly, subsoil moisture. So in 2018, their subsoil moisture was fully replenished. In 2021, their subsoil moisture reserves were basically 0. And so they grew a 60 bushel wheat crop on subsoil moisture. In Ontario, with 35 inches of rain, do we even care about subsoil moisture?
No.
Everybody says no, right? You're 100% agreement. The answer is no. Emphatically no.
Well, maybe we should care, but...
Yeah, maybe we should care. Absolutely, maybe we should care. So let's think about this. If I'm a corn crop on the 25th of July, right? how much water am I using every day? If I'm on track for 200 and plus bushel corn, 240, 250, Lee's doing the count, it's actually 300, right? If I'm 25th of July, how much water does an acre need every day? What about a soybean crop? A tenth of an inch? Interesting guess, yep. Soybean crop, so the soybean crop on August the 20th, does it need more water than the corn crop? Less water than the corn crop? Less? What about a wheat crop on the 20th of June? Less? So in actual fact, when it comes to the water demand of crops, it's always the maximum water demand in grain fill. So with corn, that maximum water demand starts 2 weeks before tassel. So let's say it starts July the 1st. It's pretty significant on June the 15th, June the 20th, because it's doing a lot of growing. But maximum hits basically 2 weeks before tassel, and then it's maximum water demand right through till at least dent stage. With soybeans, it's R2 to R6. So that's sort of, I don't know, 20th of July through to end of August, somewhere in that time frame. We're a little ahead this year. And wheat, it's basically from boot stage through till the wheat almost is starting to just starting to turn color. And every one of those crops through that time frame needs between 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch of water per day. They all need the same amount. Now, how often is it that we regularly get 2 inches of rain every week through the grain fill period for those crops? Never. Thank you very much. So how is it that suddenly we get 250 bushel corn or 120 bushel wheat? How does that work?
Subsoil moisture.
Bingo, subsoil moisture. And they focus on that in Western Canada all the time, and we totally ignore it, right? We just ignore it. Why do we ignore it?
Because we've never really been short of it that much.
Are you short of it right now?
We're getting close.
No, we're short of it. If we weren't short of it, you wouldn't be seeing tip back on the corn ears. You wouldn't be seeing depth. Oh,
Here. Yeah.
well, that's not what Lee tells me. Okay, that was Renfrew. Okay, so then you're on the cusp, right? You're on the cusp. What about your soybeans? Any wilting in the soybean crop? Because we're certainly seeing that other places.
Oh yeah.
Just in the hard spots.
Ah, the hard
A little bit, but
spots.
the rest of the field's still looking
Okay.
good, but it's aborting beans. So
If it's aborting beans, that means
yeah,
that you should have more what?
water.
Water, thank you. Okay, so realistically, as much as you don't want to admit it, John, realistically, this subsoil moisture actually makes a huge difference. The reason we don't ever pay any attention to it is because we always have full moisture recharge over the winter. And that's because we get 35 inches of precipitation. And that doesn't happen in lots of other places in the world. It's a luxury we have. But at the end of the day, if we're going to go into these repeated droughts, right, we need to know what we have available in that subsoil, and we need to have an idea of how to manage so that we can utilize that subsoil moisture better. So, when I talk about that, what are the management or the soil factors that will have an impact on how much moisture I have available in that subsoil layer?
Organic matter.
Organic matter? Okay. What else? Compaction. Good. What else? Slope. Yeah, slope.
All runs off into the ditch rather than.
So that's actually infiltration.
Okay.
It's not really slope, but it is infiltration. You're absolutely right. If I get a 7-inch rain in an hour, it's not likely all going into the soil. So slope, whatever. Yep. What else? There's other things for sure.
Your type of soil?
Bingo. Good one, Keith. So soil type. What else?
Drainage?
Drainage. Yep. Anything else?
Tillage.
Tillage, excellent. Well, you guys are on fire. For a small group, you're getting more of them than most big groups did. Anything else?
Residue is different than organic matter, I think, because if the residue is on the top, then it's not.
Absolutely. Residue. Residue. Anything else? So there's a couple. So it's not just soil type, but it's also soil depth. Because if you're 1 foot to bedrock, right? No, you laugh, but the last group I said 1 foot to bedrock, and the one grower said try 2 inches. Right? And so clearly, like so depth matters. And it's related somewhat to organic matter, but man, it's different than organic matter. And organic matter gets overplayed, and I'm going to call it tilth. Because tilth is a huge part of, can the water that's there get to the roots, or can the roots get to the water? And I can take a high organic matter soil, and if I compact it, it's not going to have good water holding capacity, right? And so organic matter plays, but it really is the tilth of that soil. And in an earlier group, what was really interesting is one grower said, you know, I have this sand field, and every year there's 3 strips in the sand field. Every year those 3 strips will be double the yield, don't suffer the drought. Like, it happens consistently. And I said, so why is that? He said, they're old fence rows, right? And so old fence rows make that huge difference from a tilth standpoint. They're probably higher in organic matter, but it isn't that organic matter is the driver, it's that structure. You take an old pasture and you shove the shovel in and dig up that soil. What's it like? It just falls apart in your hand, right? Like it's crumbly and like that. So tilth is a really big one. Okay, so just for fun, the one other thing that I will just mention quickly is timing. Okay, and that's timing of a lot of things, but timing of rainfall is really quite important. So if you want just some numbers that I think are kind of fun numbers, it takes 2 millimeters of rain on an acre to give you 1 extra bushel of corn. And that's not carved in stone, but that's kind of an average. Believe it or not, it takes 3 to give you a bushel of wheat, and it takes 5 to give you a bushel of soybeans. So that's kind of funny, because wheat's the dryland crop. Corn doesn't handle drought as well as wheat, but it takes a little more moisture to give me a bushel of wheat. Meanwhile, Warren Schneckenberger's here, and his neighbor got 15 millimeters of rain that he didn't get just after anthesis of winter wheat. And remember I said, when's maximum water use? We're in that time. He got 3/4 of a ton, or his neighbor got 3/4 of a ton more wheat than Warren did on 15 millimeters of rain. And you say, well, wait a minute, 3/4 of a ton is actually 27 bushels per acre, and you're telling me it takes 3 millimeters, he only got 15. He shouldn't have got 3/4 of a ton, he should have gotten, I don't know what, like a 0.15 of a ton. And its timing is so critical, so when it happened right at anthesis, they set more kernels. And when they set more kernels, because it wasn't under drought stress, then that's 3/4 of a ton. So when we look at this water issue, it really does become quite important, because super dry up until that point, right? And we'd already used a bunch of that moisture. All right, so timing matters as well. What difference does it make in terms of soil type? So, how much water is in your soil in the spring before you start? How much reserve do you have?
Lots of water.
Lots of water. I like that, John. What's lots, John?
When our farm is covered with a lake,
That's why we need tile drainage, John. You missed that part of the talk. But we have 35 inches of rainfall, and we only want 24, 25 for the crop, so we got to get rid of 10. That's where your lake goes, right? That's your 10 in your... Anyway, so I'll give you the numbers because soon Lee's going to kick me out of here. In a sand soil, you have a 1/2 inch of water in reserve for every foot of soil. Okay? What about a silt loam? What do you think a silt loam gives me? So actually 2 was a very good guess. It's 2.5 inches per foot. So a silt loam has 5 times as much water holding capacity, and this is available water to the crop, than a sand does. What about a really heavy clay? If you go to Western Canada, they have clays that don't crack, and their clays actually hold more water than their silt loams. But our cracking clays, they hold more water but less available to the crop. And so our clay soils here in Ontario actually only have about 1.5 inches. So they're way better than a real sand, but they're not as good as a silt loam. And Keith Wells was here. He said he has 4 feet of silt soil, right? If you have 4 feet of silt soil, how much water do you have in reserve? You have 10 inches, right? If I need 1/3 of an inch of water per day, if that subsoil is full, how long can I go without rain?
30 days.
Right, 30 days. Quite a while. Whereas if that subsoil is empty, then how long can I go? And the answer is I can't at all. So the one last thing actually that you guys missed over here, and I'm sure John would have caught it, but that is crop diversity. I should have mentioned that one, right? And crop diversity, if you don't put wheat in the rotation, then you lose on tilth, right?
Had to get it in somewhere.
I'm Wheat Pete. If you think I'm going to give a presentation without promoting wheat, you are insane. It's just the way it works. Anyway, so crop diversity also plays herds. You've heard that message enough. I don't need to go down there. But what's really interesting is that this crop diversity on a perfect year, it has very little impact. It's a little impact, but it's very little. You get to these hot, dry years, and the impact of diversity is huge. And the reasons that it's huge mainly is that we have much better tilth in that soil. Wheat roots, they don't go as deep, and just for fun, so alfalfa roots go 5 feet deep. How deep do corn roots go? Good guess, 4. How deep do soybean roots go? 1.5 foot if you're lucky. Actually, they go 2. What about wheat? Pardon?
About a foot.
About a foot. How would you like to leave the group?
I am in a minute.
Wheat is 3. Now, we've found wheat roots way deeper than that, and that's spring wheat data, that's not winter wheat data. But the difference, if you look at a corn root, look at the size of the roots. They're big, honking, fat roots. They don't have a lot of fine, fibrous roots. What do wheat roots look like? They're fine, they're fibrous, so they actually don't go as deep. But they really access the moisture in that 3-foot zone because they're so fine and fibrous and penetrate so well. And they really do huge things for this tilth. Okay, I need to finish up because it's Lee's turn. From a management perspective, is there anything you can do as a farmer from a management perspective to manage that subsoil moisture better?
Drainage.
Drainage, yep, and controlled drainage is one thing that we need to start looking at, where we can actually shut the tile and stop the water from coming out. But I'm a big supporter on drainage, so I'll say yes to that. I'm not going to talk more about that other than to agree. What else? Is tillage good or is tillage bad?
Bad.
That's what I've been trying to figure out.
It's entirely who you're talking to.
So tillage, a spring tillage pass, a pass with tillage in the spring, what does that do to the soil?
Dry it out.
Dry it out. How much does it dry it out?
Deep as you work it.
Deep as you work it?
1 inch
1 inch
per pass.
per pass. So there's some pretty good work out of Coshocton, Ohio, where they actually did some of that. And when you do that tillage pass, you lose 1 inch of available soil water. And so that, out of that, right, if we have a silt loam or a loam soil with 2 inches per foot, we just gave 1 of those inches away. If we're going to go into a drought, that's not a good thing. However, do we see more drought symptoms in no-till or in conventional tillage? Where do we see the worst drought?
No-till.
No-till. Now, how does that make any sense? There's more water in no-till. How can I see more drought in no-till?
Denser ground.
Because the water doesn't get to the plant, or the plant roots don't get to the water. So you're 100% right. It's denser ground, and the capillaries are small because it's compacted. It just naturally compacts, or we drive over it. And so is tillage a good thing or a bad thing?
Good thing.
It's both. It really is both. And so my challenge to you from that perspective is we should start investigating different ways to do tillage. So I love strip till because I can put my strip in place in the fall. I loosen that soil up in the strip, and then I don't touch it next spring. And so if I don't touch it next spring, I don't give away any moisture. If you don't like strip till, then you start looking at other ways, like minimum tillage. We give away less moisture. If we do vertical tillage, if we do those high-speed discs, and Lee's going to talk about that, if it's too wet, we create a compaction zone, and that's all bad. So here's a different thought process on tillage. Chad Anderson, a great agronomist in Lambton County. Anybody know what the soil like is in Lambton County? Like heavy, like 65% clay. When it's dry in July, land a 747, don't make a mark. Like, it is just bad. Stick your shovel in, try to dig some soil out, break the handle. That's the kind of soil it is. So what they do is, after wheat, they deep rip, and I'm not a deep tillage guy, but it naturally compacts, so they're trying to create some loose soil so the roots can grow through it. Deep tillage, work it level, and then about the 1st of September they plant oats. They plant oats and they only let them get up about this high. And then next spring they don't touch it, and they plant soybeans because they don't plant much corn in Lambton County. But they have seen some massive yield gains by not working that soil in the spring. And the last thing that I'll throw at you, and then it's Lee can talk, but it's variable rate population. If I'm in Nebraska with no irrigation, what's my corn population? 24? Try 12, 14, maybe 16 in the good spots. If I got a foot of soil over bedrock, I think 24 is way too much. And so if you start looking at your depth of topsoil, then I think you can really start to make better use, and your soil types, of variable rate population. I think there's some real potentials.